The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. It's been less than 2 weeks since the Senate voted to grant immunity to phone companies involved in the Bush administration's secret domestic surveillance program. Now, some of these same telecom companies, including AT&T and Comcast, are focusing their attention on advertising at the upcoming Democratic National Convention. AT&T is the official wireless provider at the convention. Like Comcast, Motorola, Coca-Cola, Google, and a host of other corporate sponsors, the telecom giant has donated over $1 million to the DNC in return for prominent display space and access to elected officials. But none of these companies have fully disclosed their projected contributions to the convention. This, according to a new report from the Campaign Finance Institute. Out of a reported 146 organizational and corporate donors to both the Democratic and Republican conventions, only 31 have disclosed information about their contributions, the report says. We're joined now from Houston by Steve Weissman. He's Associate Director for Policy at the Campaign Finance Institute. We're also joined on the telephone by Glenn Greenwald, constitutional law attorney and political and legal blogger for Salon.com. He joins us on the phone from Brazil. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Steve Weissman, let's begin with you. Can you talk about who gives money to the conventions and how we know how much they give? What are the rules?
Well, the money is given not to the convention specifically, but to the host committee for the convention. But the host committee for the convention's fundraisers are people from the party that's holding the convention. So it's like giving the money directly to the party. And what we know about them before the convention is just whatever the host committees feel like disclosing. There are no requirements to disclose the donors and the amounts that they are giving. And in fact, neither of the host committees this year for either convention, unlike past years, have chosen to disclose officially the amounts of money that they're getting. And the amounts are very large because combined private money for support of the two conventions this year will exceed $112 million. So all we know at this point is unofficially, or some companies have decided to release this information voluntarily.
Now, in terms of individual contributing, there are caps set. In terms of these corporate contributions, why are they considered in a different category?
Because there's a pleasant fiction that's been created that the corporations are really just giving the money to promote the convention city, even though at least half the money is not going to come from corporations who are even headquartered in that state. And this fiction was created in the 1990s, around the same time that unlimited soft money began to flow to the political parties. The Federal Election Commission has certified that this is the motivation for giving. It recertified it in 2003. It's totally prohibited to give unlimited contributions to political parties. It's totally prohibited for a corporation or union to just go right into its treasury and give money to political parties. Yet, under an exemption that was created by the Federal Election Commission, which essentially is made up of representatives of the two major parties, all of this money can be given if it's given through a host committee under the pretense that it's merely to promote the convention city. And we've shown in our reports that the companies that are supporting these two conventions have already, are companies that have already spent since the last presidential election, $1.1 billion lobbying the federal government. So even if some of them have in part a kind of civic booster notion, obviously these people are very concerned with federal legislation, and in return for this money, and we could discuss this, I hope we do, the parties through the host committees offer access to top politicians, to the president, the future president, vice president, cabinet officials, senators, congressmen. They promise these companies who are giving that they will be able to not only get close to these people by hosting receptions, by access to VIP areas, but they'll actually have meetings with them.
Explain more fully how it works and which are the corporations you've identified that have given this kind of money. On the one hand, you're talking about lobbying in general, and then they give a separate amount of money, which some could call lobbying, by giving it to the convention.
That's right. By giving it to these host committees, they assure themselves of gratitude from the national party, from the presidential candidate, because what is a convention except the biggest and longest ad of the presidential election? And to have that speech come off well, to have the lighting and the rigging and all of the sound and the Broadway producers who do it, to have the production and the setting look just right, to have specially built podiums and so forth, that will earn gratitude. Now, we've seen that there are 146 companies that are giving, of which nearly 40 are giving to both conventions. And they are all the biggest companies you can imagine. The ones who voluntarily, and they deserve some praise for this, have at least said how much they're giving, include Quest Communications, which is giving $6 million to each convention. Comcast, which pledged $5 million to the Democratic convention. We also have United Healthcare, which has released the amount of money they're giving to the Republican convention, is clearly giving $1 million or more to both conventions. Xcel Energy, which has some big nuclear plants, which is giving money over $1 million to both conventions. And if you go right down the list, whether it's Lockheed giving to the Democrats or Safeway giving to the Democrats, whether Republicans are getting money from St. Jude, which produces medical devices, Medtronic's giving to both, AT&T, and so forth. This is where the big money is coming into the conventions. And often the press will focus on the fact that some of the same companies will have a party at the convention, invite members of Congress. But that party costs a lot less, and the whole national political party is less grateful for that than they are for the massive amounts of funding they're getting to actually put on this big political ad.
Glenn Greenwald is joining Steve Weissman. Glenn Greenwald is on the phone right now, a constitutional law attorney, political and legal blogger at salon.com. You've written a number of pieces on this, among them the AT&T convention in Denver. Can you talk about the significance of the welcome bags?
Well, there was a bag that was designed by the convention and reported by a blogger who writes about the convention in Denver that was really just illustrative more than anything else of everything that Mr. Weissman was discussing. I mean, it has the Democratic National Committee convention logo on it, and then right underneath, very large, it has an AT&T logo, and that's the bag that will be given to every delegate and member of the media who attends the convention. And the reason why that's just so symbolically interesting is because the Democrats in Congress just last month gave an extraordinary gift of telecom amnesty to most of the entire telecom industry, including AT&T and Comcast, in order to protect them from lawsuits in a bill that was written by the telecom industry and their lobbyists. So to turn around and see such a sort of tawdry expression of the very close relationship between the telecom industry and the Democrats who had just given them an extraordinary gift was I thought, quite remarkable.
Do you feel like the Democrats, well, the Republicans, of course, wanted this. President Bush was pushing very hard for the immunity. This is retroactive immunity for the telecommunications companies involved with the spy scandal. But this was just a few weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, that this was pushed through by the Democrats. And, of course, the big story, Barack Obama, the Democratic presidential candidate, who had said he would be involved in a filibuster against such granting of retroactive immunity, actually turned around and voted for it, saying that the bill was a compromise.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, President Bush and the White House have been demanding amnesty for all sorts of lawbreakers involved in torture and rendition and spying programs for many years, but none of that would have happened had the Democratic leadership in the Congress, led by Jay Rockefeller in the Senate and Steny Hoyer, the House Majority Leader, the Democratic House Majority Leader in the House, not gotten together and negotiated a bill that immunized the entire telecom industry for any crimes that they have committed or any violations of the privacy rights of their customers for allowing government spying on their customers without warrants. And as I indicated, Steny Hoyer and Jay Rockefeller, when they were drafting the bill, were actually negotiating directly with representatives of the telecom industry. They had hired an extraordinarily bipartisan cast of lobbyists, former Clinton officials like Jamie Gorelick and others, who was number 2 in the Justice Department at the Clinton administration. And they negotiated directly with the telecoms, and the telecoms would give them proposals for how they wanted the amnesty to read. And in the meantime, privacy groups like